Backyard with Dave Kent, our guest. And you're a forester for how long?
35 years.
35 years. And over that time, I think things have probably changed a little bit.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
When I first started working in the Monadnock region, the typical logging operation was conducted with a skidder and a man with a chainsaw cutting the trees and a skidder dragging them out. And nowadays there's actually 3 types of harvesting operations. The whole tree chipping operations came into play when we started burning wood chips to produce electricity.
So whole tree chipping, what is that? Just so
whole tree chipping is where it's just like it sounds. A mechanical harvester cuts the tree down and puts it down, and then a large skidder drags it out. It drags the whole tree, the tops and all, and the tree is processed into forest products, and then the remainder of the tree, the branches in the top of the tree that's unuseful for either to manufacture paper or lumber, is then ground up with a huge mechanical chipper, and those chips go to a power plant to produce electricity. It's part of the green power component of our power source supply in New England.
Well, this is just amazing. We have about 500 acres in back of us, and it looks like they've done a great job. Now, how do you decide what trees you're going to take out? Because there's all kinds of trees here. There's, lots of conifers, there's lots of deciduous. What do you do?
Well, the most important thing I try to get across to people when I talk about the responsibilities of a forester, our ultimate responsibility is to supply the raw material needs of the current population, but to do so in a manner that allows us to continue to do that for future generations. So we have to design the project so that it does not take away from the productivity of the soil, and that we get the best productivity out of the resource that exists on site. It is a lot more complicated than that, but that is the ultimate goal.
Here we are today with Wade and Dave. And Dave is a forester, and Wade, you are the woodcutter. Okay.
Professional logger.
Yes. And how long have you been doing this?
Well, full-time since I got out of school in 1980.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You're a year before me. Wow.
An old man.
Did you go to Keene High?
No, Monadnock.
Monadnock. That's okay. It's all right.
I actually graduated from Keene High, though.
Did you? Yeah. Good. Well, so we got locals here. Dave he's an
I'm half-baked.
Yeah, he's from Long Island.
I transplanted to New Hampshire 33 years ago.
Yeah.
Spent a couple of years out in Washington State, but I spent the first 19 years of my life on Long Island.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be from.
Yeah. And as you were saying, as a child, or as you were growing up, you had a reserve or preserve or something?
I grew up next to the Bayard Cutting Arboretum and the Heckscher State Park, so I had about, and there was also the Sportsman Club, and they were all connected, so I had about a 25,000 acre backyard that I spent most of my time in. And the Arboretum was nice because it identified the trees, and I just love being out in the woods, and so I decided to go to forestry school because I knew they didn't do forestry on Long Island, and I liked being out in the woods.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Here I am.
Yeah, and
35 years of working as a forester, and 33 years of it right here in the Monadnock region.
That's great. And then Wade, you've got it in your blood. Yeah. So your dad is a harvester as well as
My dad was in the logging business with me, but he's older now. He's retired.
Yeah. And did it start with him?
Me and my father together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, did you ever think you were going to go into this, or you just kind of fell into it?
No, I was pretty sure this is what I wanted
Yeah,
to do when
yeah,
I was younger.
yeah.
We'd always do firewood with my father and stuff, and
Yeah.
I like doing it. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, great. Well, you're going to hop into the harvester, and you're going to show us a little bit about what you do. So I think that's great, and let's get it started.
Okay.
So in terms of choosing individual trees, species comes into play. Just like in a garden, you have your vegetables and you have your weeds. So we pick weeds,
Right.
but our weeds are trees. And then we also have, again, like in a garden, you thin your carrots because too many seeds are in a row, and in order to get a good crop, you have to thin some of them,
Right.
and you discard those. So thinning comes into play, and then there's also value concerns. There are certain species that are far more valuable than others, so of course we are trying to bring those forest products to their maturity, so that we make the most out of the resource.
Right.
And
You're the expert, so you know what trees should be taken out and what trees need to be left.
yes,
And we have some markings here on some of the trees, so let's take a look at some of the trees that you would take down. Wow, so we've got a tree here that's got a blue marking on it. There's another one back here, and I noticed that there's another, I think it's a birch tree up here that has a blue marking. What do these markings mean?
well, these are the trees that are to be harvested. My responsibility is to design the timber sale, and Wade Pate, who is the logger in today's presentation, his responsibility is to do the logging. So we mark the trees with blue paint, and I mark the stump with blue paint so that I have a check to make sure that the project is being done the way I set it up. I chose the white birches, both of these white birches, because white birch for harvest, because they're short-lived species, and it's very likely that if I left them, that they would not be here the next time we came for a harvest. And the way this particular project is designed, we expect to return in about 15 years to conduct another harvest. So this was chosen because it's basically mature. It's also a pulpwood tree and would never be anything but a pulpwood tree. And I would prefer to focus the growth on sawlog trees. There's another hemlock tree here with paint on it. And behind that is a really nice white pine. That's going to be my crop tree. And then I have several other white pines in the background and an oak.
So will those all be cut as well at some point, or are you going to let them live?
Well, they're gonna be allowed to continue to grow this time around. Next time around, they may or may not be ready. I'll have to make a judgment call at that time, but they are going to be allowed to grow until the next entry for certain.
Okay, so we started off with an axe a long time ago.
Yes.
Then they went to the big saws. What do they call them? The big saws. with the
Crosscut
crosscut
saws.
saw. Now, so we're talking a couple $100 maybe for those saws, maybe. And then you got to chainsaws.
Chainsaws.
So those run you $200 to $500 maybe.
Well,
or-
nowadays they're closer to $700 to $1,200 for a
Okay.
professional grade
Okay,
saw.
but let's talk about the harvester. Okay.
using today is called Cut the Length, and it is the latest and greatest timber harvesting technology, and it has some significant advantages to it. One is I can harvest significant amounts of pulpwood economically, where I couldn't do that with conventional harvesting. That's a guy with a chainsaw and a skidder. And I also get the full value of the forest product, the pulpwood, whereas if I harvested these trees with a whole tree chipping operation, I would get less utilization. So the landowner, I believe, gets a better return by the use of the cut the length. Another significant advantage is it takes all the tops and it puts the tops in the haul roads, so that the haul roads are where the forest product is actually pulled out of the woods with another machine called a forwarder, and it helps minimize soil disturbance, and this is very important.
And the time of year that we're doing this too is important.
Yes, that's also of critical importance. That's why we're here in the winter time. We can also operate successfully in the dry part of the summer or fall. In the winter, in the spring, and in the late fall, when the rains come, we have to be very careful about where we operate. We can operate, but we have to be on drier soils in order to operate successfully. The other distinct advantage of this harvesting system is minimal damage to the residual trees, the crop trees that I pointed out there. When you're pulling the tree out of the woods with a skidder, even when you're careful, there is damage to the most valuable portion of the tree, that first section, the first log. That's I really am very, very pleased with this development, because in concert with better pulp markets in our region, in our backyard, I'm able to do forestry to a much better level than the first 25 years of my career. So I'm really, really ecstatic about the developments of both the markets and the machinery to accomplish this work.
And it's good for the environment. I think
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
the huge changes that you have to do or think about is the fact that you're not harming the environment. You're doing something good. You're thinning out the forest. The large trees are going to grow, and everyone is all the better.
We're very fortunate in New England. We are in a geographic location where, due to the combination of climate and soils, Mother Nature is gonna have trees grow here. Regardless of what we do to it, trees will grow, and I always relate to people, the way you know that in New England is just stop mowing your lawn, and in 5 years you'll have a young forest.
Right.
Sockets are on the top, you cut the small trees off, then it's measured from the bottom to the top of the saw. So you go to your lengths or whatever, you mark it on a big crotch tree, you mark it on the top of the saw, and cut it off at the bottom saw. These are your lemon knives, this is your top lemon knife, the bottom lemon knives here.
Wait, I understand that you just were involved in
some of the stuff, like this cover here is all solid steel now. They used to have a pocket machine in the back that would always split in half. And then so I had to put this big piece of steel in here instead of a little square tab in there. The braces like in here, the sticks used to get in there and break all the lines and stuff off the back, so we put that in there. These little gussets here, the corners would break off. Plates on the roll arms. Plates on over here. This top plate up here is all extra strong here because they're all cracked and break. Gussets up there in the corners. Slides on the top of the knife because it would always break. Round piece here, all around it because we cut the hoses in half.
So you didn't have much input on this.
These are steel, bronze aluminum now. They used to be plastic. They always would break. All this stuff is extra thick now with gussets and braces. I had a lot of input on it. Stops like here, this stop is never here. And what would happen is when you go out close, you would go past the cylinder stop and you break the end of the cylinder off.
So your working knowledge of hydraulics and mechanics and everything really has been instrumental in your success with this equipment.
Oh yes, most definitely. Yeah.
So you'd rather be using this than a saw?
Oh my God. Yeah.
So do you remember the days when, what did you first start with when you first started?
A little farm tractor and a chainsaw,
Yeah.
dump truck.
How long would it take you to cut those few trees that you just took down?
With it, I don't know. It's hard to say with a chainsaw. I mean, a good guy, he could probably do it in 10 minutes. Tell me to cut them down.
All of those trees?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how long it
I
takes.
think
A good man is pretty good. I mean, he works hard.
a lot of the time savings is in working up the limbs.
Right.
It's a very time-consuming thing, and now with this machine, he can be in that tree in a matter of seconds rather than 10 or 15 minutes. Limbing up and some of these big pine trees, it would take a good man, somebody with a really good experience. It might take him a half hour to work up one tree. Now it's worked up in a couple of minutes.
And that's nothing against the smaller loggers either. I mean,
No,
they're doing a great job.
Yes, they are. Yes,
Right.
they are. Yeah, I mean, on average, I'll cut 400 to 500 trees a day. I mean, they cut 40.
Right.
You know.
Well, and there's some people that don't have 500 acres. They just have an acre that needs to be cut, and it's going to work, or how many acres, whatever.
What I did there is I just laid those down, so they were, I wanted to make sure they went where I wanted them. So now I'm going to back up, and I was just going to process them on.
Good. Okay, great. Well, hop back in and we'll...
Okay,
Those blades are huge.
Yeah. Cut trees, whip hold stuff, knock the chain off, break the chain, bring it back.
And then you got those arms.
They do them in half.
Wow.
The top one, the bottom one, shaft one with a grinding wheel. Shaft, and they pop them in half, top and off. Wheel in the center, calculate from there to the bottom.
So that's that thing that's got the little spiky kind of
Yes,
thing.
yes, so then just like one through.
Yeah. And then the round things on the side, those are called feedles.
Yeah.
And those are what pulls the tree through when
Yeah.
you delimit. Yeah.
It's computerized, so you press the button inside whatever length you want. They'll give you 4 tries. Then you can won't delimit in 4 tries you have to do it. Or repress it.
Right, right.
But if you do it too many times, you lose your neighbor, you can start actually step
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah. But you know, still, it's a lot faster than having to cut the tree down manually and
Oh, by
go
far.
through all
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like a good man in the woods might cut 40 trees a day. That
Right.
I can cut 400 or 500
Yeah.
a day for a long time and never get tired.
Right now, is it heated in here?
Yes, heated,
Wow.
air
You got
conditioning,
music
stereo.
too? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Satellite radio.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Air seat, air right seat.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It's a good ride.
There we are.
If we don't harvest trees here, we're harvesting them somewhere else.
every day.
Inside the cab if you'd like to see something. I can stand that one here,
What am I going to look at?
Well,
first
we
here?
got the computer up here. Yeah, I just turned it on. Take a second for it to come on there, and then there we go. And it just came on. So what you have is you can clear it. Rip it up a little bit here so it doesn't stall. But you got your links. So like if you press 8'6", 8'5", it comes on 8'5", 10'5", 12 foot, 14, 16. I call it 20 foot, but it's 19.8. It's a metric link. So those are all your links.
So this does automatically stop then when you set that as far as the
yep.
lengths. Okay.
Yeah, it automatically goes to what you want. And what it does, it gives you 4 tries. So if it hits a big limb, it'll automatically back up. It gives you four tries at it. Then if it actually doesn't do it in 4 tries, then you have to run it manually yourself right here or whatever. You know, and then you got all open, all closed, new tree, bottom knife's open, bottom knife's closed, rolls forward, rolls reverse, butt saw, topping saw, rolls open right here. So it's all straightforward. Then like if you want to get into computer, you can get right in it. You can come right down to settings. There's all kinds of stuff here. So like if you wanted to adjust your your limbing arm pressures, you come down to pressure, you lock onto it. You got your front knives. You can just lock right onto. Whoops, I got out. You just come right down here and you go right to pressures. You can lock right onto whatever you want. Bring it right down. If you want to go to front knives, you can just go right into that, and then you can change it to whatever pressure you want, higher, lower, or different size limbs and stuff like that. But it's on a graph. So what you have is like this is like a 2-inch tree all the way up to a 24-inch tree. So it graphs it to grab it harder or less, so it goes through the head easier. And you got your front knives, you got your rolls. So because if you get it squeezing too hard, it won't feed the wood through the head. So you have to play with
So
all
this
that.
piece of equipment, what is the max diameter this can
I mean, the max one single cut's 24 inches. But the
24
max that I
inches.
usually do is I do whatever, because what I keep is I keep a logging tape right here, and I'll triple cut the real big trees, and I'll jump out with this, and I'll mark the real big trees, and I'll cut them to whatever length.
So if a person is just buying this piece of equipment, I mean, your first harvester that you bought, do you go to school, a simulator, or do you
there's a
on-the-job learning?
School of Hard Knocks.
Really?
Yeah.
Big giant manual, 4 inches thick, and you read it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They don't really have very good manuals. So
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pipe in here. Wade Pate's got a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks.
Yes, I do.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So you teach it.
You just go out in the woods
Wood,
and start
yeah,
using it.
start
That's the only way
using
you're going to
it.
learn.
Excellent.
But
Wow.
and you got buttons over here to open the big hood to get into the hydraulics and everything. But it's all, I mean, it's not as complicated as it looks. I mean, you got like bump knife here. You got your 2 rotates. You're on both triggers. I mean, it's once you do it for a while, it's pretty simple.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds good. If something breaks on this, you do all your own work.
It's all my own maintenance. Yeah. Takes a couple minutes sometimes. Like this piece up here, this right here, it's the heater. I can program it at night. It's like a furnace in your house. It'll come on whatever time I want. It heats my motor oil, heats my antifreeze, heats all my hydraulic oil, runs off the diesel fuel out of the tank, keeps everything nice and warm for me. So when I get here in the morning, it's all ready to go, no matter how cold it is.
This is called the forwarder. encouraged the producer or the manufacturer?
I actually thought of a bunch of really
Yeah.
important ones I didn't bring up the other day, like the sour oil. I used to use 5 gallons of olive oil a day. Now I got this whole one like 5 gallons every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Got an electric timer on there and on a circuit, so when the saw comes out, it only comes on for a millisecond. I can adjust it with a screwdriver. Just the right amount of drips on the saw instead of just like gushes of oil on it all the time.
Yeah. So now, how long has this harvester been available to the public?
I actually bought one of the first 5660s delivered to the United States about, I don't know, 7-8 years ago.
And where is it manufactured from?
Canada.
Canada, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and it was a nightmare.
Really?
Yeah.
What were some of the problems that you had in the very, very beginning?
Almost everything.
Really?
The rotate motors kept breaking the shafts, and then stick the belt back on the carrier.
Pretty frustrating.
It was very frustrating. It cost me a lot of money.
Yeah. So what did you do then? I mean, you probably called the manufacturer and said, guys, we got to get this fixed.
Yeah,
And
called them and
what were some of the things that you thought needed to be fixed?
We changed motors on the rotate to different style motors. Like the saw oil was using too much oil, so I had an idea of electronic solenoid that would only put a little bit of oil on there. Guarding, extra steel. Roll arms were breaking off, and so I made some patents out of cardboard and had them cut out, welded them all on, and then showed them. And then they actually gave me diagrams too of like a lot of the machining that was done. So I'd get a bigger piece of steel and take it to a machine shop, have it machined out, cut one off. We worked together on a lot of it, but I mean, it was research and development.
But between the pine and the hemlock, they look an awful lot alike. But right. Yeah. This reminds me of when I was a little kid. We go to the park.
Oh yeah.
Play with those little excavator things.
Into this, he wanted to cut the type of wood that we typically deal with. And the original equipment really was designed to cut small plantation stock. And here we have to have a variety of trees to cut. We cut both the softwoods and the hardwood trees, and we cut both small trees and big trees. And so Wade went for the biggest cutting head that was available, and then again he made these modifications, and that's why I think we get the best results with this equipment.
So they actually made this for like light duty. In the beginning, it sounds
well,
like.
yeah, lighter duty, but if you call Quadco right now and ask them to build a head like I have, that Quadco, they actually call it the WP model, Wade Pate.
Oh, right.
But I usually say just the HD model.
Now, do you have stock in this company now?
No, I do
No?
not.
We got to talk to those people.
I told Wade that he should get royalties
Yeah.
for every
I mean,
one of
look
these
at what
units
you have
that
done,
sell.
really.
Yeah.
But that's
I
what you
get-
get by
I-
using it.
I get some free parts now and then.
Yeah.
No, Wade's been instrumental in developing a head that works, and the thing is the variety of wood that's used, and you think about the stress that piece of equipment goes through to process those trees up. You know, it's hard to create a machine that processes both the big wood and the small wood efficiently.
Yes.
And you know, there's a lot of different, I don't understand it all, Wade understands it, but the hydraulics are very, very complicated in the machine.
Right.
It seems to run a lot smoother than initially.
Oh yes, by far. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me, what is a typical day for you? You get up at 3, 4 o'clock?
I get up 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you know, you just
I'm on
jump
the-
in and everything starts right up and you go.
I get a job at usually 4 o'clock. I got heaters on all the machines, little furnaces like you have in your house. Heats your motor oil, your antifreeze, your hydraulic oil, so everything's all ready to go. They're all on timers. You can set them for different times, different days, whatever. So like now, I leave today. It's Friday. I already set it up in the woods for Monday mornings. When I get here, I ride up with the forwarder operator, and it's ready to go.
Yep. Great.
Yeah, and then I just, you know, I cut wood, you know, most of the day. I mean, you know, range trucking, whatever on the cell phone all
Yeah.
day long.
So today we've been in my backyard with Dave Kent and Wade Pate, and you can see how it really is important to know what you're doing and to have somebody that's really responsible so that your property can look like this and prosper. So again, thank you for joining us in my backyard right here in the Monadnock region. If you're interested in information about the show or would like to be a guest or just have questions, you can email us at inmybackyardch8@gmail.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you again in my backyard. my backyard. We're here with Wayne Miller. And Wayne, how long have you been doing this?
Carving?
Yeah.
Since Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts. So,
You can use pocket knives, and you know, if you're just going to do something, if you're just going to do whittling, then a pocket knife is probably fine. Personally, I don't like using a pocket knife because it doesn't have a fixed blade, and you might get into a situation where, you know, the blade moves, and you can use pine. I know a lot of carvers that carve with pine, but they carve with wet pine. And you can do fairly large sculptures, wet pine meaning that it's still green. So if someone takes down a white pine tree, again, which there's plenty of white pine trees in the Monadnock region, if you can get to that tree in the first 6 months before it's lying in the sun and drying out, the wood is very soft, and you can carve with that really easily. So to get started, you need a bench knife, and again, I would go online to get to get a real carving bench knife. But something like this, I think this one was 1995. So it really doesn't cost you much to get going. So we were talking about chip carving. I've done chip carving classes. Chip carving is sort of just two-dimensional, where these are three-dimensional. There's height, width, and depth. Chip carving is all on one plane, and I taught a chip carving class a few years ago. But that's an example of chip carving. And what we've been doing with the Wizard is sort of whittling. The difference between whittling and carving, I guess, is just a matter of degree and how far you get, how deep you want to go. I did mention that talking about basswood, I wanted to show you sort of a before and after painted versions of a hound dog, of course with the tail in different directions because I didn't have enough wood to make the tail go up. So in this one the tail goes down, but basswood takes color really well, and this is an example of something you can do with butternut. Actually, another feature of butternut is typically butternut, if the tree is an older butternut tree, is very prone to wood borers. So butternut will often get holes in it, more so than most other trees. And I've also done chainsaw carving, and I do ice carving. The biggest chainsaw carving I did was like a 9-foot parrot one time, out of a tree that was growing through someone's deck, and the tree died because they put the deck around it, and they wanted to turn it into something tropical, so we ended up turning it into a parrot. So whether it's so it starts out as whittling, and the further you go, the bigger the carvings, the bigger the sculptures, the more they turn into sculpture instead of just whittling. Yeah, the time flies. Yeah, when I'm sitting on the bench carving, or even at a craft show or a demonstration someplace, you get into what you're doing, and before you know it, 2 hours have gone by, and you don't even realize it. So I'd love to have more time to carve, but life has to go on too. You have other things, other obligations. So we do have a website at nhcaningbasketrycarving.weebly.com. A little long and complicated. But I wanted to show you a little bit about some of the painting. I mentioned that although the butternut I generally don't paint, the basswood I generally do. This is a shelf sitter of Santa. I just got a selection of brushes. There's a whole well, not debate, but every carver has got his own particular recipe for how they carve or how they paint the carving. But all use a wash, which is basically you know, a little bit of acrylic. These are all acrylic paints, and whether it's 2 drops to 10 or 3 drops to 10 or just 1 drop to 10, it's mainly water. So, you know, a little bit of paint and a lot of water, stir it up good, and the whole purpose is to not have the paint obscure the grain. So although you don't see a lot of the grain in basswood, still you want the character of the wood to show through, so it doesn't look like, when you finish painting the thing, like it could be a ceramic. Carving is an inexpensive you know, hobby to have, and there's some beautiful things that you know, that you can create just with, you know, with a piece of wood and a knife and a little bit of time.
So if anyone is interested in learning more about Wayne and carving, or if you're interested in learning about In My Backyard, you can email us, and our email address is inmybackyardch8@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you and answer any questions you might have, put you in the right direction. So thank you today, Wayne,
Thanks,
for
Judy.
joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, and we'll see you again in My Backyard.